All right, this is our last problem for this topic. But before we get into it, I want to just kind of do a real quick little review about signs and fractions and kind of jog your memory a little bit. Um, do you remember whenever if we write, like, say, a negative fraction, there are really three different ways to write a negative fraction, but one way is not very good. For instance, if we see 1 over negative 3, that just seems really odd to us, doesn't it? We generally don't see the negative in the denominator. It's much, much better to write it either as negative 1 over 3, or we can write the negative sign out to the side and say negative 1 over 3. Each one of these means the exact same thing. It's just that this is not really good form. Okay, keep this in mind as we look at this problem. Because look at our denominators here. They are so close to being the same thing, aren't they? What would happen if I took and I changed these things around? I could rewrite this instead of 3 minus x as negative x plus 3. It still means the exact same thing. It's just written differently. Remember, because of that commutative property, I can rearrange my terms. And now, at least it's in the same order, but the signs are wrong. But what if I were to pull a negative sign out of here? If I were to reverse distribute that negative 1, then I would be left with x minus 3. This is the exact same thing that we started with. It's just written differently. Now, just like with our regular plain old number fractions, we really don't like to have a negative in the denominator. It just does, it's bad form. So our choices are, we could either bring it up to the top and put it in the numerator, or we can bring it out in front, and it means the exact same thing. So if I were to bring this out front, that means I have minus a negative. And minus a negative is really and truly just a big old positive sign. So now, when we look at the fractions, we actually have a common denominator and we are adding. So we can just work with those numerators. 2x squared minus 4x minus 1, and then plus the x squared minus 6x plus 4, all over our common denominator of x minus 3. Now we need to simplify that numerator. 2x squared and x squared. Let's see, 2x squared and x squared is going to give us 3x squared. And a negative 4x and a negative 6x would give us a negative 10x. And then minus 1 plus 4 would be a plus 3, all over x minus 3. Now remember, our last step is to see if by chance anything will happen to cancel. So let's try and factor that numerator. I'm going to drop down here so I can do that. Let's see, 3x squared can only break up into 3x times x. And 3 can only break up into 1 times 3 also. But I want a 10 in the middle. Well, if I were to put my 3 here and the 1 here, that means I would have 9x and 1x, which would be a 10x if both of them were negative. So we'd have 3x minus 1 over x minus 3, or times x minus 3, all over x minus 3. And now our x minus 3's will cancel, top and bottom, so our final answer is 3x minus 1.